to imagine yourself building a car? You have the wheels, the motor, etc. From the list of things you need to build a car, it's not random. For example, you won't need something like an apple to build a car because that just doesn't make sense. There's an entire system when building a car. It's very specific and not made of random parts. Same goes to how culture isn't a random collection of ideas, beliefs, values, and customs. It is a coherent system of tradition, values, and ways of living. Today our goal is to inform you all and have a better understanding of how culture and communication are affected by social communities and digital media. The topic is important because culture is a part of our everyday lives. We're all college students and culture is all around us. It's what we think, feel, do, and believe in. Today we will be understanding culture, relationships between culture and social communities, how digital media influences culture and social communities, and some guidelines to improving communication between culture and social communities.
So Brittany basically already explained the beginning. So yeah, culture is part of our everyday life and it's difficult to explain or define. It's part of everything we do, feel, think, believe, but we can't really point it out. As stated in our web design book, culture is values, beliefs, structures, practices that is communicated by one generation to the next. So cultures are like a system. They're just not random collections, but instead a coherent system of understanding traditions, values, communication practices, and ways of living. Oh, that's okay. So culture is an important system in which communication occurs. People aren't born knowing what to do and how to act, like how to stand close to each other or how to express disagreement politely. Instead, they learn their culture's roles for different behaviors by interacting with others, and culture shapes how we communicate and act with others. So there's 5 different dimensions on how cultures vary. So these 5 different dimensions were identified by Greek Hofstede. He was a Dutch anthropologist and social psychologist. According to Notre Dame Online, he wanted to see how values in the workplace were influenced by the culture. So the first one is individualism and collectivism. So this one refers to the extent to which members of the culture understands themselves as part of and connected to their families, groups, and cultures. So people who are high in collectivism are deeply tied to families and groups, and those who are high in individualism tends to think of themselves as individuals who act independently. So basically, for collectivism, it's more of like and for the individual one is like you're thinking of yourselves only for yourselves and you're more independent. So the next one is uncertainty avoidance. This one is when people ambiguity and vagueness. So this means that people try to avoid misunderstandings and have a set of rules. So for instance, in Poland and South Korea, people have everything spelled out very neatly to avoid these misunderstandings and uncertainty. So next one is power distance, and this refers to the size of gap between people with high and low power and the extent to where the gap is regarded as normal. And then in some cultures, distance between high and low power is great and often inherited. And this basically causes people to respect the powerful or the people who are in the higher. But the people in cultures where distance is small, people assume that those in power have earned it and rather than gaining it by being in powerful families. So the next one is masculinity and femininity. And so this refers to a culture that values aggressiveness, competitiveness, and being dominant versus being gentle, cooperative, and caring. So cultures that are high in femininity are more gentle, cooperative, and caring. But for the opposite, men are more aggressive and competitive, and women can also be the same, but they're like lower, like they're not that aggressive. The next one is the last one is long-term and short-term orientation. And this refers to when members of culture think about long term, such as history and the future, versus the short term, such as the present. So according to Credo reference and Don Clark from nwlink.com, long-term orientation is thrift, perseverance, and having a sense of shame and is identified with virtue. In contrast, short-term is more of respect for tradition, fulfilling social obligations, protecting one's space, and is identified with you. Now that I explained about how cultures are like systems and divided, the different or the five dimensions on how cultures vary, Joshua will be talking about the third and fourth principle of culture.
So the third principle of culture is dynamic. It means they are involved and change over time. In another word, there are four primary sources of change in culture life. The first one is invention, which is creation of tool, idea, and practice. For example, wheel is creation of tool. It makes transportation like cars, bicycle, etc. The second source is diffusion, which involves borrowing from other countries. For example, touche, yin, and yang. Also, invention idea affect social life. For example, the United States was found the concept of democracy, which influenced law, rights, and responsibility. The third source is calamity, which is diversity that brings about change of culture. For instance, war may diversity a country, destroy land and people alike. It might also involve disasters such as hurricane. The last source is communication. Communication is naming things in ways that shape how we understand them. According to the article, The History of the World Rape by Mark Peter, it states that during the late 1980s, many women have to sex with the men they are dating. Until recently, there was no term that named what happened as a violent invasion and criminal act. Indeed, the four primary sources of culture in culture life is invention, diffusion, calamity, and communication. Okay, let's move on to the fourth principle of culture. When we speak of different culture, we often think of geographically distant religion, for example, India, Africa, but geographic separation is not what defines culture. Culture is what a group of people believe, value, and does. So the four principles include multiple social community called co-culture or social community. Social community is a group of people who live within a dominant culture. For example, immigrant might identify both the culture to which they move to and the culture of their homeland. In addition, social community tend to rely on a high context style, which is indirect and undetailed, assume people are deeply in connect, not feel the need to spell everything out. But individual culture generally use lower context style, which is the opposite of a co-culture. It is more detailed and precise. Furthermore, different way of communication may cause misunderstanding. According to Sato, traditional Japanese people tend to do not touch or shake hands to greet. Instead, they bow to each other to keep them have some personal space. However, in Greece, touching is part of being friendly. So there are four key premises about culture. The first are culture are systemic. Second, they are five-dimensional. And the third is there are four primary sources. They are dramatic. And now we understand how important is social communication.
Okay, so as we're learning our language, we start to learn what culture values is. So communication and culture influences each other. Culture is reflected in communication practices. At the same time, communication practices shape our cultural life. So according to an article called How Culture Controls Communication by Carol Kinsley Coleman, she stated that culture is basically a set of shared values that a group of people hold. Such values affect how you think, act, and more importantly,
the kind of criteria by which you judge others. For example, in many Asian languages, they include words that describe specific relationship, like youngest son, grandmother's brother, to further put an emphasis on the importance of family. A Chinese axiom stated that no need to know the person in the family, which reflects that belief that families are superior to an individual, whereas in English language, there aren't as many words to describe precise kinship bonds. Western culture put emphasis more on individualism and personal identity. It's okay to be different, but be yourself. So according to the article, Culture Values of Asian Patients and Families by Marcia, she stated that it is true that Asians tend to be highly group-oriented people who place a strong emphasis on family connections as a major source of identity and protection against hardship of life. From birth, we are already beginning to learn beliefs, values, norms, and language of our society. Therefore, being raised in an Eastern household or Western household, you will adopt the values, beliefs that are prevalent in the culture. What you will learn is all up to what has been seen or heard from other individuals communicating around you. You may accept and approve it, or you may not.
To add on what Kia said, another example is that in many Asian cultures, from their perspective, they value elderly people as someone who is wise and deserve the highest respect, whereas in Western cultures, they value youthful and full of free spirit and despise seniority. According to the article, How Culture Controls Communication by Carol Goman, it states 3 different ways culture influences communication within social communities. As stated before, cultures are either high or low contacts. So when cultures are in high contacts, they're unspecified and can only be understood through nonverbal cues and in-between-the-line interpretations. Whereas when cultures are low contacts, they are more specific and more explicit in their communication. The second way is when cultures are either sequential or synchronic. So when cultures are sequential, they believe that time is money and it can't be wasted, it needs to be saved or spent. Whereas when cultures are synchronic, they view time as a constant flow to be experienced in the moment and as a force that can't be controlled or contained. The last way is when cultures are affirmative or neutral. So when cultures are affirmative, they show emotions and high effects. For example, laughing or shouting or crying. Whereas when cultures are very neutral, they don't really telegraph their feelings in a communication sense. They are more careful in monitoring the amount of emotion that they display. Now that we've talked to you guys about the relationship between culture and social communities, Amber will further inform you guys about the influence on digital media within cultures and social communities.
So today, the digital technology plays a pivotal role in the way we teach people solving